A country where almost half the people need help just to survive. Where journalists are killed in the middle of the day and nobody is punished. Where you can be killed for changing your religion, for who you love, or even for having a phone without permission. This is not ancient history, this is Somalia today. We base these videos on the analysis of different real cases of people facing persecution in their home countries. We are country witness experts from London, focusing on human rights violations. We receive cases for analysis from major law firms who represent asylum seekers in the United Kingdom, United States, Canada, and European Union. Our goal is to prepare evidence-based assessments and expert witness reports for submission to court in asylum tribunals. Today, it is a story about Somalia, a country from where many of the refugees are coming from. If you are an asylum seeker or a legal representative looking for a country expert witness, you will find a verified list of qualified professionals covering all major regions of the world via the link in the description below. To understand what Somalia is today, you need to know how it got here. In the 19th century, Somalia was split between three colonial powers. Britain took the north, Italy took the south, and France took what is now Djibouti. These borders were drawn in Europe. Nobody asked the Somali people. In 1960, the British and Italian parts joined together to form one country. But unity did not last long. In 1969, General Siad Barre took power in a military coup. He ruled for over 20 years, using clan divisions to keep control, crushing anyone who opposed him, and turning the army against his own people. When his government fell in 1991, there was nothing to replace it. No working institutions, no trust between clans. The country broke apart. Warlords and clan militias took over different parts of the territory. For years, Somalia had no central government at all. The United Nations tried to intervene and failed. The world largely looked away. It was in this chaos that Al-Shabaab was born. The group grew out of the Islamic Courts Union, a network of Sharia courts that many Somalis actually supported at first because they brought some order when there was none. But Al-Shabaab split off, became more extreme, joined Al-Qaeda in 2012, and turned into something far more dangerous. Today, Al-Shabaab is not just a terrorist group. It works like a separate government. It has its own courts, its own religious police called the Hizbah, its own tax system, collecting millions every month, and it controls a large part of southern and central Somalia. The group follows a very strict version of Islamic law. If you steal, they cut off your hand. If you commit adultery, they kill you with stones. If you drink alcohol, they beat you. If you leave Islam, they kill you. But it goes further than that. Listening to music, smoking, watching TV, wearing Western clothes, having a phone without their approval, all of this can get you arrested, beaten, or worse. And there is no way to appeal. Their courts have the final word. No questions asked.
حد ديمقراطي وديدنتين
وإسك فوضى الديمقراطي وحوي ودين قالوا أننا مبدأ يوحنا كأبتر سنة نودي لهاي أنا ما دام أنا ضد مسلمين مسلم الديمقراطية مال موضة كلام الديمقراطية وحوي أن الحكم كان يجا إسكال شعب كإسكال أنا نحن من سنة إن الحكم إلا لله.
The official government, the federal government of Somalia, does exist, but it struggles to control even parts of Mogadishu. More than 100 clan militias operate across the country. The northern region of Somaliland declared independence decades ago. Federal states argue with each other over power and money. Somalia today is not one country, it is many broken pieces, and Al-Shabaab fills the gaps.
عيد كستا أو ديمقراطية وتنوحان إلهي سبحانه وتعالى ما أنت أمر خاتي قشنينا إنا نون تكون فنينا.
Al-Shabaab practices takfirism, the doctrine by which any Muslim who deviates from their interpretation of Islam is declared an apostate. And apostasy carries the death penalty. Converted from Islam to Christianity, to Al-Shabaab, you are a high-value target for assassination. Sufi Muslims whose practices include the veneration of shrines and music in worship are likewise targeted. In June 2024, approximately 30 Sufi scholars were abducted near the town of Afguye. But here is what matters. Persecution on grounds of belief is not confined to Al-Shabaab controlled areas. The Federal Somali Penal Code also prescribes the death penalty for apostasy. The construction of non-Muslim places of worship is prohibited across the entire country. This is not the work of terrorists alone, it is the law of the state. Let me tell you about one case. The details have been anonymized, but the facts are drawn from a real asylum claim referred to our team by a law firm in London. A woman in her 20s, I will call her Amina, was living in a town in the Lower Shabelle region. She was a school teacher. Her brother had joined Al-Shabaab, and when he was killed in a government military operation, the group came to her family. They told her father she was to marry one of their fighters. She refused. Her father tried to negotiate. Al-Shabaab gave them 1 week. Amina fled to Mogadishu, then to Kenya, and eventually reached Europe. When our expert assessed her case, the finding was unambiguous. Return to any part of Somalia would place her at serious risk of forced marriage, sexual violence, and possible death. Her asylum application was granted. In 2025, 2 journalists were killed in Mogadishu. Mohammed Abukar Dabashe was killed in an Al-Shabaab bombing in March. Abdi Fattah Abdi Osman was shot dead in May on his way to work.
How exactly is the situation with journalists in Somalia, and how are they coping? How are media professionals coping with, such risks, at work at the moment?
Thank you for to your program today. Let me begin by sending my heartfelt condolences to my colleague, Mohammed Abukar Dabashe, the first journalist killed in Somalia this year on March 18, 2025, as he was killed in a bombing explosion in the Somali capital, Mogadishu.
In March 2025, police in Mogadishu arrested 19 journalists from both local and international outlets in a single day. They were loaded onto a lorry, taken to a police station, had their equipment confiscated, and their footage deleted, and were then released.
Majority of the cases are journalists who were detained from the street. They were snatched from the street, taken to the police station, and held for hours, and then afterwards released. That means there was no legal justification whatsoever for the detention. This is a kind of an intimidation and harassment intended to stop the reporting these journalists are doing.
The government then went further, issuing a directive that criminalized the publication of any information relating to security incidents in the capital. The Minister of Information warned that violators would face prosecution and severe punishment.
So I think what we see is impunity of the highest order since the president of Somalia declared war on Al-Shabaab in 2022. So journalists have been victims, and officially the Minister of Information, Dawda West, announced a ban on news that threaten national security. But the fact of the matter is that the government is the one that is defining what national security means, whereas media practitioners are looking at national security from the context of the freedom of the people. So it's not just about the freedom of individuals in government, it's about the freedom of the people, it's about freedom from corruption, it's about freedom from transparency. So journalists have the responsibility to report news in favor, in defense of their own people. But the government wants to define security from its own image.
Somalia ranks 3rd on the Committee to Protect Journalists Global Impunity Index. Those who kill journalists here do so in the near certain knowledge that they will never face justice. For LGBT individuals, Somalia is one of the most dangerous countries on earth. And this is not solely a matter of Al-Shabaab, which executes people for homosexuality under its application of Sharia. The Federal Somali Penal Code also criminalizes same-sex relations with a sentence of up to 3 years imprisonment. And within Somalia's prisons, LGBT detainees face violence from fellow inmates and guards alike. Article 409 of the Somali Penal Code prescribes up to 3 years imprisonment for same-sex relations. But in the areas controlled by Al-Shabaab, the punishment is death carried out publicly by stoning. There is no contradiction here in Al-Shabaab's view. They simply enforce what they consider the uncodified remainder of Sharia that the penal code left out. There is not a single organization, not a single lawyer, not a single state body anywhere in Somalia that provides any form of protection to LGBT people. Disclosure of one's orientation in any context whatsoever carries a potentially fatal risk. Internal relocation as an alternative is simply not available. Criminalization applies across the entire territory of the country.
Critical legislation including Sexual Offences Bill, the Child Rights Bill and the Anti-FGM Bill remain stalled in Parliament, leaving survivors without protection or redress. Minorities, marginalized groups and persons with disability continue to face discrimination and exclusion.
9.1 million people needed help in 2025. That is almost half the population. War, drought, floods, cholera, measles, everything is hitting at the same time.
What we are lacking is resources, and we need resources now in order to be able to prevent a further deterioration of the situation.
Mogadishu is the capital. 3 million people live there, and more than a third of them have been forced from their homes. They live in makeshift camps on the edges of the city, often on private land. Camp bosses called gatekeepers charge them rent, make them work, and have almost total power over them. Women and children suffer the most, especially those from smaller clans, with no powerful relatives to protect them. Women who run households alone in these camps face sexual abuse. Female genital cutting affects more than 98% of women and girls. According to UNHCR, by the end of 2024, there were approximately 4.3 million Somalis displaced in total, roughly 3.8 million internally displaced within Somalia, and over 900,000 registered as refugees in neighboring countries. The largest refugee populations are in Kenya, primarily in the Dadaab and Kakuma camp complexes, and in Ethiopia, but only a fraction reached the West. In the 2023 fiscal year, the United States received approximately 8,700 Somali asylum applications. The United Kingdom received around 4,500. Across the European Union, the largest numbers were recorded in Germany, the Netherlands, and Sweden, with a combined total of roughly 15,000 applications. Recognition rates vary, but they are telling. In the UK, the grant rate for Somali asylum claims has been around 50 to 55% in recent years. In Germany, it is lower, closer to 30%. In the United States, Somali cases have historically had one of the higher grant rates among African nationalities, though exact figures fluctuate year to year. What these numbers mean is simple. The people who flee are not a small group, and roughly half of those who reach a courtroom in the West are found by judges applying legal standards to have a well-founded fear of persecution. Can people escape by moving to another part of Somalia? For most of those in danger, no. Al-Shabaab has spies and fighters in every major city, including Mogadishu. If they are looking for you, whether you are a journalist, a former member who left the group, or someone who changed their religion moving to a different city will not make you safe. For people from smaller clans, moving to Mogadishu means poverty, discrimination, and life without protection. For LGBT people, there is simply nowhere safe in Somalia, not a single place. Somalia is a country where a terrorist organization runs a shadow government, and the real government cannot protect its own people, where more than 100 armed clan groups fight over land and power, where the climate destroys what the war has not. Freedom House rates Somalia as not free, one of the lowest scores in the world. This was an episode of the human rights, looking at the reasons that force people to flee their country. Thank you for watching. You can also check out our weekly news roundups on this channel. I'll see you in the next one. Take care.